Hello, welcome back to the Much Flute channel. Today I am back with another video and I'll be talking about how to clean your flute and just some tips on how to maintain your flute in good condition. Let's get started. So it is really important that you clean your instrument regularly after every single play. This is because if you don't, moisture and condensation builds up inside the flute, even if you're playing for 5 minutes, and if you let that moisture and condensation sit inside your flute, it becomes a growing environment for mold, so the inside of your flute will get moldy, and also the moisture that gets underneath your keypads can actually deteriorate the pads faster, which means you need to get the pads replaced more often. Remember, your instrument is worth quite a bit of money, so it makes sense to spend a little bit more time and take a bit more care to ensure that you keep it in its best condition. Another advantage of getting into the habit of taking care of your flute is that if in the future you decide you don't want to continue with the flute and you want to sell the instrument, you can actually get a much better price if you've kept the flute in good condition versus if you've just sort of let it deteriorate over the years. So the essential cleaning equipment that you should have if you're playing the flute is a wooden cleaning rod, some cleaning gauze, and a polishing cloth. And the cleaning rod should be a wooden one, just so it doesn't scratch the inside of your flute. You don't have to get blotting paper or cleaning paper, but it can be very useful if you play very regularly, because blotting paper is really useful in getting the moisture out of your keys and keeping them dry so that they don't stick or make a really annoying sound every time you press down the keys. So you wrap the gauze around the cleaning rod and you push it in through the head joint and you just twist. Just be careful that you don't push in the cleaning rod too hard, otherwise you might accidentally damage the crown of the head joint. So just be nice and gentle. You repeat this step for the middle joint and the foot joint until the inside of your flute becomes relatively dry. So a lot of people I know don't clean the outside of their flutes very regularly, but I would strongly advise that you do that just to get rid of the excessive buildup of grease, dirt and oils. Personally, for me, the flute feels a lot cleaner and a lot smoother to play after I've given it a good wipe down. And the least you need to do is to clean the joints of the flute. So this bit here on the head joint, this bit here on the middle joint, and this bit here on the foot joint. This is to avoid those parts jamming from an excessive buildup of grease and dirt. This has happened before to so many of my students, and it gets to the point where the parts won't even come off no matter how hard you try, and the only thing that they can do to get this rectified is to take it into a technician. This trip to the technician is completely avoidable if you just get into the habit of wiping down the outside of your flute after every play. If you play on a plastic flute, you don't have to worry about polishing or cleaning the outside of your flute. Just make sure that you keep the inside of the flute dry after every play. So in general, it is strongly recommended that you service your flute once a year. This is true across beginners, intermediate and advanced flute players. When you take your flute in for a service, the keys get cleaned, the pads get replaced, and the levers get oiled to make sure that everything functions properly, much like how a car needs to be serviced regularly. When your instrument isn't regularly maintained once a year, a lot of issues can come up because of the parts not working properly, and it can actually make accomplishing certain skills more difficult than they need to be. This is a pretty easy fix if you just get into the habit of taking your flute in to a service every year. Usually school holidays is the best time for a lot of people to get that done. There tends to be a longer waiting list, but it's better to just, if you can get it done, don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year. Worst case scenario is that the issue becomes so significant that it stops you from being able to play your instrument entirely. So currently in Australia, at the time of filming, you can expect to pay around about $200 Australian for a student flute service. This amount varies depending on whether you play on an intermediate or professional flute. The more advanced flute that you own and you play on, the sort of higher this amount is, because the build of the professional flutes are a little bit more complex, a little bit more detailed. They require a little bit more fine work, but this amount can be more or less depending on the condition of your flute, how well you've maintained it, as well as what needs to be fixed. So these are the reasons why it's wise for us to get into good cleaning habits early on in our flute journey, so that we don't end up spending more money than we need to, and we make our learning curve on the flute as smooth as possible. Flute is already difficult enough without all these extra little obstacles. Cleaning equipment is definitely something that you need to have if you've decided that you want to start learning the flute in order to keep your flute in good condition. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Happy fluting!